afternoon, this is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta, the next great American city, Battleground Zero, the epicenter of the 2017 civil defense of the United States of America. Beautiful day so far in Chamblee, Atlanta. It's winding up on 4:30 in the afternoon. Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. Following the breaking news, of course, Trump passed today. Breaking news about the current president, Donald Trump, through his Justice Department. We refer to it as Alabama Justice. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, former U.S. Senator from Alabama, sworn to uphold the Alabama Constitution, and then again sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, bringing an onslaught in two directions. One, immigration, to greatly reduce the number of legal immigrants coming into the country, and this really harkens back. Once again, we broadcast about in Cyber Time, the 1924 Immigration Act, signed by the executive order of the president at that time, Calvin Coolidge, which greatly limited the legal immigrants from the continents of Africa and Asia. And that's the breaking news, also coupled with a coming onslaught on affirmative action and articles mentioning recent Supreme Court decision that the particular racial quotas of the University of Texas were not unconstitutional when a white student had brought a case of discrimination. At any rate, so we're going back again in time, Cyber Circle time, Alabama Justice, JFK, George Wallace, governor of Alabama, in the doorway. And we're going to pick up, we're going to summarize on the same day, June 11th, 1963. The scene was Alabama, at a university, and the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, stood in the doorway and basically hearkened on a speech over and over. He became a national figure from that day on, and would launch a couple of runs for the presidency of the United States. And basically, we're going to summarize his speech that day: segregation now, segregation forever. And coupled with that, under the state constitution of Alabama, as governor, he had a right to the state's rights that they could basically regulate their particular departments of education without interference from the central government. But we're going to pick up the text of that night. Former President John F. Kennedy made a speech on civil rights, and we're going to pick up the text. It's in copperas.com. That's COPPERAS.com. And it was a televised address to the nation. And we'll start at the top. This afternoon, following a series of threats and defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court of the Northern District of Alabama. This order called for the admission of two clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happened to have been born Negro. That they were admitted peacefully on the campus is due to the good measure to the conduct of the students of the University of Alabama who met their responsibilities in a constructive way. I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backed backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free. When Americans are sent to Vietnam or West Berlin, we do not ask for whites only. It ought to be possible, therefore, for American students of any color to attend any public institution they select without having to be backed up by troops. It ought to be possible for American consumers of any color to receive equal service in places of public accommodations such as hotels, restaurants, and theaters and retail stores without being forced to resort to demonstration in the street. It ought to be possible for American citizens of any color to register and to vote in a free election without interference or fear of reprisal. It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race, his color. In short, every American ought to have the right to be treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated. But this is not the case today. The Negro baby born in America today, regardless of the section of the nation in which he's born, has about 1/2 as much chance of completing high school as a white baby born in the same place on the same day. 1/3 as much chance of completing college. 1/3 as much chance of becoming a professional man. Twice as much a chance of becoming unemployed. About 1/7 as much chance of earning $10,000 a year or more. A life expectancy that is 7 years shorter, and the prospects of earning only half as much. This is not a sectional issue. Difficulties over segregation and discrimination exist in every city, every state of the Union, producing in many cities a rising tide of discontent and threatens the public safety. Nor is this a partisan issue. It is a time of domestic crisis. Men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party and politics. This is not even a legal or legislative issue alone. It is better to settle these methods in the courts rather than on the streets. The new laws are needed at every level, but law alone cannot make men see right. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the scriptures and as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public schools available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. They are not yet freed from the bonds of injustice. They're not yet freed from social and economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all of its citizens are free. We preach freedom around the world, and we mean it, and we cherish our freedom here at home. But are we to say to the world, and much more importantly to each other, that this is a land of the free except for the Negroes? That we have no second-class citizens except Negroes? That we have no class or caste system, no ghettos, no master race, except with respect to Negroes? And we want to stop right there, because on the immigration situation, it seems as though it's an embodiment of the 21st century. The new Negro includes Asians and Africans and South and Central Americans. We'll continue now with John F. Kennedy's June 11th, 1963 speech to the nation on civil rights. It's not enough. Here we go. Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south, where legal remedies are not at hand. Redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests, which create tensions and threaten violence and threaten lives. We face, therefore, a moral crisis as a country and as a people. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is time to act in the Congress, in your state and local legislative bodies, and above all, in all our daily lives. And now we're going to stop right there because of all the protests and demonstrations against our current president. And we know that probably if you look at the vote totals from the 100 largest cities, our current president did not carry the 100 largest cities, where you have more of what they call a diversity of individuals, and really this spilling out to protest in the streets and the selection of that's just putting people at risk, and what's occurred is that our current president has co-opted the mayors, the police chiefs, of course the sheriff's departments in the outlying counties that he took in the 2016 presidential election to crush these protests and whatnot, and perhaps even detain and jail the leadership based on labeling them as potential enemies in the war on terror. Okay, so now here we have an attorney general from Alabama, Jeff Sessions, and this is Alabama Justice. This is JFK, Trump path, JFK, George Wallace in the doorway. Okay, so as far as affirmative action in the civil rights acts in the 60s were really a reconstruction of Reconstruction after the Civil War, and Reconstruction broke down because of systematic Jim Crow laws and domestic terrorist attacks on African Americans. And in the 60s, this was a reconstruction of Reconstruction, and it affirmative action. But the time has come. The time has come where this government support is going to be withheld from the universities. It's going to be withheld. The affirmative action and whatnot. The time is past for that, and there's a time when people separate again, and go back to that separate but equal kind of thing, and really for everyone of every walk of life, of every color, you must strive to be the best. Strive to be the best. That's the way to leave the discrimination behind. Strive to be the best. And for the predominantly black universities and whatnot, don't expect any more federal aid, federal funding. And for the universities that have the student protests and whatnot, your federal funding may be cut off. And for the cities that welcome immigrants, your federal funding may be cut off. And that's just the way that it is now. And these things can be reversed in our electoral process in the elections. And that's it for now. This is Derek Chamblee, broadcasting from Chamblee, Atlanta. It's winding up on 4:30 in the afternoon, Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. CYBERCYRCLETYME, orator John F. Kennedy, former president, and his speech on civil rights. It's Alabama Justice, Trump path, Wallace in the doorway. CYRADYO, Cyber Citizen Network, Derek Chamblee. Thank you very much.